Hello, everyone. This is Web3 Thrives, Pioneers, Challenges, and the Collective Vision. This is John Gleeson with Storj, and he's the COO. Thank you, John.
Thank you, JT. All right, everybody, thank you for showing up for the talk. I know everybody who is out there walking in just kind of smelling the air outside. I'm glad we're doing this in February and not July. Kind of smells a little bit like a new algorithmic stablecoin out there, but it's just livestock. So I'm here to talk about what it's going to take for Web3 companies to really grow and break out and get real-world adoption. And I'm talking about mass adoption where Web2 companies are starting to use Web3 tech in real-world workflows. So what I'm really talking about here is like not just dabbling their toes, not just the innovation team doing a proof of concept or a trial or getting a partnership and doing an announcement and raising another round. I'm really talking about what's it going to take for the little tiny bubble there that's the Web3 utilization to be bigger than the other bubbles in that market. And a lot of projects, when we're talking sort of in our little sewing circles, right, we're all sort of focused on this set of what are the barriers to adoption? What are the big things that are preventing those enterprises, those SMBs, those individuals from taking this tech and really running with it? And from our perspective, what we've seen a lot of, it comes down to a few things, right? Everybody talks about wallet UX, but it's more than just the wallet UX. It's the user experience from end to end. It's really making sure that when we are building services, we're building them with a customer or an end user in mind, and making sure that we can hit those needs and solve those problems. A lot of the time, because it's a distributed service, it ends up being slow. It ends up being unreliable because it's all untrusted under infrastructure at the end of the day. And frankly, a lot of these things are the sort of the Rube Goldberg machine or a science project way of solving what is otherwise a perfectly well-solved problem in Web 2. But we have some ideas about what's actually working. Because at Storj, one of the things that we're really happy about is we are seeing really good growth. And part of our hypothesis is that we started with really looking at a market that we wanted to conquer. And it wasn't creating decentralization necessarily, although that was sort of the heart of the bottoms up is finding a decentralized way to solve a specific problem in Web 2. But really the why, the problem we were focused on was disrupting a market. And that market was Amazon S3, right? Object storage, the largest market for storage in the world. We wanted to find a way to bring all of those workloads into Web 3. And so if we think about our particular space, right, object storage, the outcome first, right? We wanted to find ways for customers to move off of the hyperscalers and onto Web 3. And what that means is we had to provide a value prop for them. We had to address what they care about most. And in the current market, we're seeing a lot of growth. It's because they care about reducing cost, right? Amazon bills are enormous. They care about privacy. They don't want their data being mined. They want security. And frankly, at the broader market, more people want to participate in the cloud economy that currently costs $1 billion if you want to crack that nut. And if we can limit the centralized dependencies of these services, all the better. But when we're doing these things and we're solving the problems and we're trying to build this use case, it's really important that the actual service that you build is good. It's got to be better than the centralized alternative or nobody's going to move. It's got to be cheaper. It's got to have broad-based applicability to a lot of different customers, and that's what's going to help drive that adoption, and that's what we're seeing as well. So in the storage space, that's one set of things, but we're also seeing this in a lot of other areas, right? We're seeing a lot of traction because cloud bills are high, and in this economy, people want to reduce their cost, and their highest element of cost, other than pretty much salaries, is generally their cloud bills. But there are other players in here, in kind of the DeepIn space, that are also seeing really good traction. And these are sort of the players who are in the AI space, right? People who are in decentralization, they had built this pool of GPU, and all of a sudden the market came to them and said, oh, hey, we need GPU, and lots of it. And they were really well positioned to take advantage of that because they had built these distributed systems. These distributed systems are able to scale much more broadly and much more quickly because they don't have to worry about the supply chain issue of getting new equipment. They can get out there and tap into an existing market of underutilized resources and underutilized services and bring those to market quickly, much faster than anybody else who's just in the wait list trying to get GPU purchased. Similarly, if you look at something like Livepeer, Livepeer is doing a great job because they bring a service to market that looks and feels very familiar to your Web 2 buyer. But at the end of the day, it's all Web 3 on the back end. They have a distributed network of CPU and GPU that's doing all of the video transcoding. They have hosting services. They're actually backed by Storj for the storage services on the back end. And we do all of the storage and the VOD on-demand streaming with Livepeer. But the key thing about looking at why these projects particularly are succeeding in a market where lagging adoption is sort of the norm for Web3 services is kind of key. So when you look at these three services and you look at what they're doing and you look at things like the Web3 index, which kind of tracks usage and utilization of services, you'll find that a lot of the players that are in the deep end space are at the top of utilization networks because they're solving real problems. They're solving problems for people that have money to solve them, and they do it in a way that's familiar and compatible. So I can talk a little bit about what's driving our growth and adoption. And by growth and adoption, what I'm talking about is we have real-world Web 2 customers migrating off of Amazon, migrating off of Cloudflare, Wasabi, Backblaze, mainstream products that are offering object storage today. We're growing anywhere from 40 to 50% month over month, bringing on real paid storage. And the way we're able to do that is sort of focusing on some of the inherent benefits of distributed systems. So we tap into 23,000 storage nodes in 105 different countries today. They're operated by 10,000 different individuals. In the aggregate, it's the size of a very large storage data center. And we built that by crowdsourcing it, kind of acting like the Airbnb of hard drives. And building that data center then gave us some really distinct advantages over the Web 2 providers, right? We're building this all on OpEx, not CapEx. We're not buying servers, we're not building buildings, we're not stuffing them full of hard drives. We're finding existing capacity that's underutilized that people want to monetize. And in many cases, it's fully depreciated. It's stuff where any money that gets made is absolutely attractive to the person operating it. But because of that structure, our costs are a lot lower. We don't have to worry about that stuff, so it affects our COGS. It allows us to price more aggressively. And in doing so, the entire network benefits, right? 22,000, 23,000 nodes all earning real money that's coming in from outside the ecosystem. From a speed perspective, when you have a distributed system, when you have those 20,000 nodes, you have all of that underutilized bandwidth available, it's incredibly fast from a throughput perspective. You can move a lot of data across the internet, and it can be fast consistently anywhere in the world. We don't have to build 10 data centers and replicate it 10 times all over the world. The network effect of having that huge distributed system gives you a performance advantage. We are globally faster than Amazon S3. Everywhere in the world, we are faster. And that's even with like a 5 meg upload download. Distributed systems are generally terrible with tiny files. But we are able to leverage that network of computers all over the world and be faster. From an availability perspective, every distributed system out there allows you to sort of take advantage of the fact that because you're pushing that workload around, if any component fails, it's not a big deal because you have a ton of redundancy elsewhere in the network. And so that gives us the ability to offer the equivalent of multi-region storage with a single upload, and it helps anybody using that service. And distributed systems kind of all have that in common, that ability to distribute risk across a large amount of networks. And then because of the way that availability of all of those resources work, it gives you durability, right? And durability means that if you upload an object, if you start a workload, that it's going to complete. It's going to be there and it's going to endure, as opposed to some of the maybe less structured things where if you have a single data center and that data center goes offline, like Amazon US East does from time to time, every service in the world that you love from Netflix on down goes offline with it. But with a distributed system, you kind of avoid that single point of failure inherently. Now, distributed systems and decentralized projects also, in addition to sort of exploiting the good things about their architectures, generally kind of avoid the successful ones, some of the harder aspects, right? So if your onboarding process is easy, if you simulate an experience that is familiar to Web 2 as much as possible, it's going to drive adoption. Those friction points of wallets and finding abstraction layers to solve those problems are absolutely critical to driving adoption. And that familiarity is really advantageous. If you have a compatibility layer, if you have things that are consistently compatible with the existing infrastructure that they have today, it's going to make it easier to adopt. They don't have to hire people with new skills or rebuild applications. It just works with with existing kit. And then not falling into ideological traps, right? Focusing on the customer. What do they care about? In certain ways, they'll care about a lot of the things like cost, speed, and durability. But buyers in the Web 2 world don't care about decentralization. And so presenting them a message that here it's decentralized, they'll respond they don't buy decentralization. But if they get all the benefits of decentralization, the speed, the cost, the availability, the durability, all those good things, that turns the meter for them. And so it's breaking into Web 2 has as much a messaging component as it does a feature and an interface. So the things that really move the meter for us, right, driving adoption from Web 2, is compatibility and performance. And this wasn't easy, by the way, because it's hard enough to build a decentralized service, let alone make one that's good, and then make it better than something like Amazon that's had a 15-year head start and billions of dollars to put into it. And so from our perspective, that compatibility layer, we put up an S3 gateway on the front. This is how all of the apps in enterprise talk. And it spoke a native Web3 protocol on the back end. We think of it kind of like as the Web3 mullet, right? It's all business up front talking Web 2 and party in the back talking Web 3. But a lot of this is actually also related to price. And it's not price in the terms of like token value or tokenomics or anything like that. It's really about price in terms of value, right? And being able to come in and establish a price point where ultimately enterprise will look at it and say, it's so inexpensive, I can't not at least take your meeting and have a conversation with you. And then once they see the value, being able to actually get real dollars in from Web 2 into a Web 3 economy is absolutely critical for scale, right? It takes it from a project to an ecosystem in which you can build businesses. And whole data centers can contribute a ton of capacity to an ecosystem and monetize it in a way that is material to their bottom line. And so when I talk about the Web3 mullet, when I talk about those interfaces, we talk about those in terms of like bridging those Web 2 and Web 3 worlds. And there's a whole bunch of benefits to the decentralization. There's a whole bunch of benefits to having sort of a minimum viable centralization, an interface that's familiar to Web 2. And it gives you those sort of two sides of the coin, right? That whole decentralization aspect gives you the privacy, the security, the immutability, all those benefits around performance, availability, data sovereignty, owning your own data, and the economics that really make sense for people when they're using it. But at the same time, you have a similar set of features in Web 2 that just the compatibility layer, that same familiar experience. And so when you bring those two things together, it really allows you to break out and break into that space. So what does this mean for decentralized services going forward, right? When I think of all of the services out there that are building applications and not the ones that are talking about any sort of transaction that could be in any kind of blockchain and cross-compatibility and all of that good stuff and composability. I mean solutions. I mean things that solve problems for customers that have money to pay to solve them in a differentiated way. I mean putting the decent and decentralized, like making them good. So compatibility is key, not just with Web 2, but a kind of across Web 3 as well. And so when you think about Web 3 today, and even over the last few years, it's still a lot of discrete individual services and point solutions that are composable into an application layer. But nobody's going to do that work, right? Everybody just wants something that's already a solution that works. And what we're seeing is, in Web 3, people putting together a bunch of disparate services into solutions, things that solve a problem. My favorite example is one of ours, so it's probably why, but our integration with Livepeer is actually an end-to-end solution that we're winning in Web 3. We take that solution to the National Association of Broadcasters event, the largest media and entertainment show in North America in Vegas. They'll be there next month. And we will take that application out there and we'll integrate with a bunch of media workflows, but this is a viable solution that is 80% lower cost than Amazon, just as performant, just as scalable, with an 80% lower carbon footprint. And you can take that message to a Web 2 audience and they will buy it. And when they try it, it's good. Web 3 solutions also have to be scalable, and not just scalable to the sense of like thinking in terms of like how many transactions per second will this do before the blockchain falls over. I mean scalable in terms of thinking in terms of what the Web 2 world looks like. So when I think of Amazon, I think of Amazon's 160 exabytes of storage. That's a lot. And for storage to store that, Storj on our network, we need 440 exabytes, right? We have an expansion factor where we're storing that on lots of things. That's an enormous amount of storage. And if we store normal data on there, I don't even know how many zeros that is, but it's also a lot. We need a lot of space. And if you're storing that on Filecoin, the way to do it, they need a zettabyte. That's even bigger. So these are scales at which billion-dollar companies struggle to sort of get to that scale. Amazon is obviously the biggest. They are much bigger than Google. They are much bigger than Microsoft Azure, right? And everybody else is a rounding error. But Web3 technologies have this unique ability to tap into underutilized capacity all over the world and actually achieve bigger scale than some of the largest organizations in the world. And I think this is what's out in front of us. This is our challenge, is to provide those layers, bridge those gaps, bring those Web2 workloads in to drive revenue, success, and ecosystem sustainability in Web3. The innovation is all in Web3. We are doing things differently. I look at our own project. We are the first net new architecture to try and disrupt Amazon since Amazon brought cloud to the market in the first place. Everything else has just been a Me Too carbon copy of their existing approach, trying just to eke out more and more narrow margins. This is a net new disruptive approach. It's like Airbnb disrupted the hotel industry. It's like Uber and Lyft disrupted and kind of wrecked the taxi industry, all for the better. This is an approach that we can take to existing cloud services, existing financial systems. Everything in Web 2 can be disrupted if we do it right. But we have to focus on the customer. Because even though the innovation is in Web 3, the workloads and the money today is still in Web 2, and we need to bring that into our ecosystem if we're going to succeed. So that's my talk. I appreciate your listening. Thank you. If anybody has any questions, you can ask me, or you can find me on Telegram, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever your choice is. I'm surprisingly unoriginal across all three. Got a question in the middle, sir.
Hi, thank you very much for your talk. I represent Hivelo, which is a deep-in aggregator, and Storj is one of the first protocols that we've integrated into our platform. Can you give us an update and snapshot of usage of Storj, money spent, and what you expect over the next 12 months?
Sure. So if you want to kind of look at traction, revenue metrics, we're very transparent. So you can see revenue tracking on the Web3 index. You can see usage on storjstats.io, I think it is. But if you search Storj stats and you search Storj info, you'll get public dashboards that are maintained by other people that are pulling information about the network to give you exactly the size, utilization, full breakdown on egress, data stored, accounts registered, the whole 9 yards. So you get a really good footprint just on publicly available stuff. In terms of the next 12 months, we are relentlessly focused on providing a disruptive service in Web 2 and growing revenue. That's like job number one. So we are adding more compatibility. This quarter, we're bringing out S3 versioning, and following that will be object lock. And basically, once you've got that set of features with what we currently have today, we are immediately compatible with the two subsegments of the object storage market: media and entertainment, where we're rapidly growing in the media workflows for productions, and CDN origin. But this gives us a huge leg up in media archiving. And then in the second area, it's the backup services. And so today we work with most of the backup products today. But then there are things like Veeam and Haiku that require some specific features around object lock and versioning to achieve sort of their immutable storage for certain compliance use cases. So those are like the kind of product feature-wise. And then on the Web3 side, we're continuing to find projects to do integrations with that really bring well-rounded solutions. So we're working with Akash to bring together compute and storage. And that's been working well. We have a number of joint customers together, but we want to scale that up. We're going to continue to double down with Livepeer because it's just working really, really well. We have a lot of joint customers in that space. And it's really just about relentless focus. And so we have just a ton of progress in terms of enterprise offerings, achieving compliance requirements for large enterprises that need SOC 2 or whatever. So it's just, it's the boring stuff, right? Focusing on COGS, CAC, LTV, the SaaS metrics that really drive growth. And then all of that boring stuff really translates to rapid 50% month-over-month growth, kicking ass against Web 2 companies, right? And that's what I'm really excited about. Hopefully that answered your question. Maybe a long answer to short question. All right, anybody else? All right, well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. With 16 seconds to spare, thank you. Have a great day.